Story 1. It's a lot, but the one that really destroyed me was after my parents divorced. My father told me my mom had passed away. I was 7. I only discovered she was alive when I was around 22 or 23. Story 2. Mom will always comment on my body, whether I am too skinny or chubby. No matter how many times I ask her to stop and tell her that it hurts my feelings, she continues to do it and then wonders why I get so upset and do not want to talk to her. Story 3. I was in junior high, 8th or 9th grade, putting on makeup. My dad walked by the bathroom and said, "It won't matter. You will still be ugly." I am 58 now, and I can count on one hand the number of times I have tried to wear makeup since then. Story 4. I saw a psychologist when I was 12. She asked my father what he thought I needed. He told her I needed to be punched in the face. Story 5. I don't think they realized it was hurtful, but telling me that they never wanted children. The only reason they had me was because my mom was afraid she would be alone one day and wanted someone to take care of her instead of being in a nursing home. It made me feel like a burden or a mistake since they did not want children. It also makes me feel like I do not have a purpose outside of being my mom's personal nurse, which is very upsetting. Story 6. I disown you. The very first time I met my real father. Why? Simple. I had black friends. I will not shed a tear when he dies. Story 7. When I was in my 20s, I asked my mother for us to be friends because I needed to be able to tell her things without her reactionary yelling and judging. She said she could never be my friend. She would always be my mother. I told her how much that hurt, but also that from that point on, she would never know who I really was because I would keep most things from her and lie to her. She has been gone for 22 years, and I still think about that conversation. I just needed a mother who could listen and not yell or judge. And she could not be that for me. Story 8. My mother said some very hurtful things to me throughout my childhood, but I think the worst was when she looked me straight in the eyes and said, "Legally, I have to love you, but I really do not like who you are as a person." Story 9. Dad told me I was just lazy after leaving school because of depression and stress. The depression and stress that mostly he caused. He still thinks he was the best father ever. Story 10. God forgive me, but I just don't love you like a daughter. Please don't touch me, don't hug me. I was 8 years old. I wish I never had you. I will never understand why she didn't love me, and I will never get answers. I just hate that she was able to love my siblings. Maybe I was a bad kid. I don't know. I just wish I could get over it. But that still affects me to this day. Story 11. One time, totally out of nowhere, my mom said, "You were just like your father." And not in the "yay, you got his smile" way. It was one of those cold, sharp moments during an argument, you know? I just stood there like, whoa, okay, guess we are going there. Funny thing is, I did not even know what she meant exactly, but I felt the weight of it. I still kind of do. Story 12. I embarrassed my dad. I don't remember how. I just know he was upset. He said, "Why don't you dig a hole and die?" I was 8. Story 13. When I was 13 and trying to buy swimsuits with my mother one summer, she said she would only buy me the cute rainbow two-piece I wanted if I lost weight to fit the smaller size. Story 14. To this day, I still haven't gotten over it. My dad and mom said, "Sorry, son, but you bankrupt the family business and ran it into the ground." I live with that every day. Story 15. I found evidence that my mother was cheating on my father when I was 10. I carried it with me for a while, then mustered up the courage to confront her about it. As a 10-year-old, it was more like asking her while shaking. She told me it was not what it looked like, but asked me not to tell my father. As a child, I obviously trusted my mother even though my gut feeling told me something was wrong. Over the years, I tried to tell my older brother about my suspicion, but he dismissed me. Later, at 15, it all came out. I am now 26, and it has definitely affected how I trust others. I love my mother, but I still have not forgiven her. I do not think she understands just how much that one conversation hurt me. Story 16. Want to see the watch that my wealthy daughter bought me? She married a medical doctor, did not work outside the home, and I was a vice president at my company. Story 17. The man who raised me told me I was less intelligent than a brick wall when I was about 10 and later said my oldest son was a mistake. Story 18. I am a failure because you are a failure. He could not have hurt me more if he dragged a knife down my back. Story 19. My dad told me that we would have been better off being a pearl necklace on my mom's neck. I never understood it back then, but now I know that it is messed up. Story 20. You will not finish it. You never follow through on anything. They would not pay for me to go to a trade school. Then they got mad when I became a stripper and kept asking why I did not get a real job. I eventually made it on my own, but I sure could have used some support. Story 21. My parents drank every night. One night, my mom seemed really sad, so I wrote her a note that said, "What's wrong?" She wrote back, "I have a nosy 8-year-old that won't leave me alone." I was crushed. Our family room was lined on two sides with very full bookshelves. I chose a book and put the note in it. In 2005, as we were cleaning out the house for my mother to move into a retirement community, my father had died 20 years earlier from stomach cancer. I found the note. All of those feelings came rushing back. I ripped the note up and never mentioned it to my mother. Story 22. When my husband decided to end the marriage, none of us knew he had been having affairs. The split came out of nowhere. My mother, with whom I have as little contact as possible, came around and said, "Is it because she is ugly? Is it because she is fat? Is it because she is sick?" She said this to him in front of me as I was crying my eyes out. Story 23. Do you want your mother to kill herself? This was after I told my father I wanted to leave the house because I was tired of my mother's abuse. Story 24. My mother said she would rather be with my stepbrothers because they own houses. My father would always call me a coward. Story 25. I know if your brother and sister were still here, they would not be acting like this. They respected me. They were doing something with their lives. They would have amounted to something. I will never be able to understand why you are the one who is still here. Story 26. My mother attempted suicide on my birthday and said it was because she hoped to ruin my birthdays for the rest of my life. Story 27. I know this might not sound very hurtful or bad, but when I first got my braces off after wearing them for over a year, I was very happy about my new smile. I had been very insecure about my smile and crooked teeth before. The first thing my father said when he saw me without braces was, "Your teeth are a little yellow, aren't they?" To this day, years later, I still do not smile showing my teeth because I am afraid people will think they are too yellow, too crooked, or too ugly. Story 28. I wasted 22 years of my life raising you children. Now it is my turn to have fun. She was marrying someone barely older than me, and I am 5 of 6 children. It lasted a little over a year before he left her for someone closer to his age. Story 29. Not directly, but I would wake up to my parents arguing. One particular wake-up call was overhearing that all of my parents' problems were my fault. I was a stay-together for the kid's son to my parents. I imagine they had no idea I was awake and hearing them. I gave up trying for their affection or love at that moment, and I was only 6 or 7 years old. Story 30. Came home from college with my new girlfriend. First thing she says is, "Boy, did you get fat?" And they wonder why I seldom visit. Story 31. You're too big for ballet. I was 5. I also found out I had a brother on my dad's side when I was 18. I spent 20 years looking for him with the limited information I had. Late last year, at 38 years old, he admitted he made it all up. 20 years searching, breaking my heart, refusing to date people in the age range I was given, chasing leads secretly because nobody cared enough to help, and he never existed. I only found out because he drunkenly messaged me after several years of wanting to meet his granddaughter. I told him he would when I met my brother. Came clean when she was 5. Story 32. Mom, if it wasn't for you being born, I could have divorced your dad sooner. Dad. The tie is between being called "you're stupid" multiple times as a kid, and when he first saw me in my wedding dress, saying "you're fat." Story 33. 1. There is no reason why you should ever weigh more than 120 pounds. said when I was about 13 and 5 feet 8 inches tall, despite that being literally anorexic. This gave me body image issues for the rest of my life. 2. This does not give you an excuse to be promiscuous was the only thing he said to me after my mother took me to the doctor for my excruciating periods when I was 14, and I was prescribed birth control pills to manage them. Story 34. One day when I was about 12 years old, my cousins came over to my mom's place to see if she would call the school for them to skip classes, and she agreed. They said, "Thank you, Auntie. We love you, Auntie," and so on. Then my mom seriously looked at me and asked, "Why don't you call me Auntie?" I thought, "It's because you are my mom." Story 35. My mom said, "I brought the wrong child home from the hospital," implying I was not her biological child whenever she was angry at me. More than 20 years later, that still hurts and stays with me. Story 36. I would say it is more about what was not said. My mom left my dad when I was 12, which was about 20 years ago. She left because he was one of the worst people I have known. He cheated on her, stole from us, drank and yelled at us, sabotaged us, and could not do anything right. He died a few months ago, and it seems my mom has forgotten all that. I have tried to share my feelings with her about how bad he was because she is one of the few people who saw it firsthand. But she says I need to get over it, that it was a long time ago, and he wasn't so bad. I am just looking for some validation in how I feel about my horrible dad and to not be dismissed and told to get over it. Story 37. During a conversation about why I was not dating anyone, I mentioned it being more difficult because I was chubby and did not feel good about myself. My mother said, "Guys like all different types and sizes of girls. You just need to wear more makeup." Story 38. "The Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away," said my dad after I crashed my brand new car I got for my birthday. Story 39. When I was 12, my father, a prominent surgeon, bluntly told me, "I don't think you're smart enough to ever be a success in life." That silently infuriated me. I made it my life quest to prove him wrong. And that's exactly what I did. I became an extremely successful military officer, and through frugal living and financial acumen, I have more money than I know how to spend. My father's situation? I had to take over his and my mother's finances in 1995 to keep them out of bankruptcy. He may have been a brilliant surgeon, but he was not skilled in economics. Story 40. My father told me that I better get used to working with my hands, implying I was not intelligent. The joke was on him. I led multiple cybersecurity teams at one of the world's largest banks and retired well off before I was 60. Story 41. I am covered in scars, and my mother has told me that I will not be pretty in the wedding dress I will never wear because no man would want to marry me with my scars. Story 42. I was 10 years old and at the time had undiagnosed type 1 diabetes, which can cause weight loss, extreme thirst, and hunger. I was in the car with my dad in the parking lot of the grocery store. I loved cheese and was starving, so I dug around in one of the bags and found some cheese to snack on. Before I could open it, he slapped it out of my hands and said, "You don't need that. You are fat enough already." I remember crying and stammering, "I'm not fat. Mommy said I'm just husky." I was diagnosed a few months later when my aunt, who is a nurse, suspected something was wrong and took me to the local clinic to have my blood sugar tested. I then dropped all the weight and grew a few inches in height. I'll never forget that. I am now a 43-year-old man. Story 43. They told me to never talk about anything related to my mental health again. That is why I never tell them how much I am really struggling. Story 44. Probably not the most hurtful outright, but I used to get told, "I love you, but I don't always like you," a lot. It really did some damage once I started hearing it over and over. Story 45. That I should have been born a boy. It was a long time ago. I said it out of anger in the moment and probably do not remember. Story 46. My father did not raise me, but he saw me occasionally during summer or Christmas vacations. When I got my university degree, he told me to my face that he would have had one too, if he had not devoted his life to raising his children. Story 47. My mom has always been unstable. My parents got divorced, and I wanted to live with my dad but was too afraid to ask her. One day in the car on the way home, she was talking about school. We lived in a different town from my dad, and I told her I wanted to go to school in my dad's city and live with him. Took all my courage to tell her that. She went quiet for what felt like forever, then completely exploded, swerving the car. When we got home from what felt like the longest, scariest drive of my life, I got in the tub to hide. She burst into the bathroom while I was sitting naked in the tub and started throwing insults at me. Bitch, selfish traitor, and more. I told her I was sorry and that I would just kill myself. I was 13 and overwhelmed. She said, "Oh, you want to kill yourself? Let me help you." And she brought a box cutter toward me. My brother heard this and called my dad. He promptly fixed the situation. Needless to say, I live with my dad. I want to cut her off so badly and never talk to her, but she's still my mom. I'm so scared she'll kill herself. I'm 18 now. Story 48. Biological mother sped the car up, ran a red light and screamed, "I hope we die," at my brother and me because we were acting like 7 to 9-year-olds. It was a sign of things to come. No contact for over 4.5 years now. Story 49. Why can't you just be normal? My mother screamed at me during my first and only panic attack. She tried to break down the bathroom door I had locked because she was worried about me. I never really saw her the same after that. Story 50. 1982. That's what you get for being where you didn't belong, my parents said after I told them a drunk man put his hand in my pants. Story 51. I had a pretty face, but I did not have a pretty body to go with it. I was not as pretty as my older sister either. I was 12 years old at the time. Both my mom and stepdad said it was time for me to know the truth. Story 52. My mother told me she could never love me truly because I was not the kind of girl she wanted. I was a roughhouse, loud, extroverted tomboy. I instinctively knew she did not like me, but still. Story 53. Probably the most hurtful thing my adopted mother ever said to me was, "I can't believe you honestly think that your writing is any good. I can't believe you spend this much of your free time writing such objectively terrible work. It's garbage. And I think you should stop." Not long after my adopted father committed suicide, I started working on some creative writing projects as a coping mechanism. This continued throughout high school. In my bedroom, I had my own personal computer. This was fortunate because I had done so much volunteer work for the computer lab's older teacher, who had a lot of physical disabilities and later gave me one of the lab's older computers once the school bought new ones. One afternoon, I was working on a piece of my own creative writing. The event was so sudden, startling, and traumatic that I don't even remember what specific piece I had been working on. All I know is that I was in my own little world, visualizing the story in my head and trying to figure out how best to put it on paper. Without any warning, I heard my mother and older sister suddenly burst into mocking laughter. After the shock of the sudden noise, I demanded to know what they had been doing in my room. My mother said she had come in to tell me that she and my sister were going to the store and to remind me of my chores when they began reading over my shoulder. That's when she said what she said. I can tell you with absolute honesty that despite this happening roughly 25 to 30 years ago, it still affects me to this day. If you look at my recent posts on Reddit, you may find that I have taken to painting Warhammer miniatures. I've only been doing it for a little over a year. I showed my miniatures to fellow players at the shop, and they told me I was constantly improving with each model. Eventually, they almost looked forward with anticipation to see my next picture or to walk over to me the following Saturday when I showed up to the game. They told me I should post pictures of them online. At first, I really didn't want to because I kept hearing my mother's voice in my head. It made me think that no matter what anybody said to me, no matter how kind or supportive, I couldn't get what she said out of my head. I should also mention that growing up, my mother was a bit of a narcissist. She told all three of us, myself and my two sisters, that she was always correct and that was rule number 1. Rule number 2 was that if she was ever incorrect, we were to refer to rule number 1. She made us keep a wooden plaque with that phrase in our rooms, right over our doors. It was so drilled into my head that even today, it often overrides any overwhelming kindness, support, and love. Do not get me wrong. People have said some honestly terrible things to me in the past. This one sits at the absolute top because I can push about 99% of the worst things people have said to me to the side. I'm not excusing it, but I kind of understand. This was just senselessly and needlessly cruel. Story 54. Telling my mother my stepfather was touching me, and she looked at me and said, "Are you sure it wasn't just a dream? He molested 2 other young females that I know of. There could be more." Story 55. Said on August 2nd, 2025. Your brother and sister make really good money. It is unfortunate that your life did not progress. Story 56. I was about 14 and experiencing serious mental health issues. All I wanted was some positive attention from my parents because they were rather cold and distant, as if they were already disappointed in me. I started banging my head on the walls, and my dad said, "Stop that, you'll damage the wood," as if the walls were more important than my brain. It still hurts more than 20 years later. When I brought it up with my mom, she said, "Oh, I don't think he actually said that," which hurt even more. I love my parents, but they will definitely go into a care home as soon as they show any signs of dementia or other serious illness. I am not going to take care of them. Story 57. Dad told me, "I have a new family now," while dropping my stuff off at my mom's in garbage bags, telling me to only stay with my mom from now on. He took his new family on all kinds of trips without me and my biological brother when they moved in with him. Then he stole our trust fund money to buy his new family a cottage that my biological brother and I did not even want. There was also the time he called me a stupid slut, while screaming and spitting at me because I stayed over at my boyfriend's when I was 17. I have many stories, honestly, and that is just about my dad. Mom has a list of her own. Story 58. My stepfather worked for a large weight loss company. At 8 years old, I was a tall for my age, scrawny child, but he did not want to take any chances on having an overweight stepdaughter making him look bad. So he started weighing me every Saturday morning like one of the program members, and if I gained any weight, I did not get my allowance. He watched every bite of food I had, told me my pants were getting too tight, and laughed and mocked me when I did not get my allowance because I was getting taller. Yes, I do have food and body image issues. After he died and we received his ashes, my mother and I took them to the old swampy field behind our yard and scattered them there. Story 59. Of all the discussions I have viewed in more than 6 years on Reddit, this is probably the saddest and most disturbing. Peace to you all, to your own children, and, if possible, to your flawed parents wherever they are. Story 60. I suppose one wrong deserves another. This statement is something my adopted father said. I'm fairly positive that you are going to need somebody to take care of you for the rest of your life. No matter what you do, no matter how many times we try to tell you things, you just don't seem to get it. Either can't or won't. I hope you understand that it's very unlikely you will ever be able to support yourself. You're never really going to amount to anything. At best, you're going to be the stay-at-home husband and nothing more. This was said to me not long before my father committed suicide, probably a handful of months at best. This happened after one of my parent-teacher conferences. I think it was the 4th grade. I don't remember exactly what my teacher said to my father, only that he was expressing concern that I might have some manner of learning disability. Because this was the early 1990s, mental health professionals did not have a true understanding of what was going on. It was easier for them to tell me what I was not than what I had. For the record, I have borderline personality disorder. It's not attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. It's not an inability to focus as I could listen intently. The issue came from the fact that if I wasn't interested in what was being spoken about, I just didn't seem to want to record that into my memory. An example would be a history teacher giving an entire lecture on one particular battle of World War II, which I was very interested in, but only an hour or two later that same teacher could begin attempting to teach me some math formulas and nothing would stick. It wouldn't be until years later that I would come to understand that my father had his own mental health issues. This doesn't excuse what he said, but as an adult it makes it easier to at least relate to. I think it was because these unspoken issues, combined with the potential stigma of being a father to a child with a learning disability, that he took it personally. Unfortunately, it still has far-reaching effects today. I always had this mental block or a kind of mental lodestone around my neck. This wasn't so much a fear as a doubt. I doubted that I would ever be good at anything, and I would never have any true independence. Because of particular medical issues at the moment, this is actually pretty much the case. I can't take care of myself on my own, and I need somebody to take care of me. However, for a bare minimum of 20 to 25 years, this was not the case, but because of what he said, it put me on the path that led me down the chain of events leading up to me writing this post. Story 61. I think I'm lucky that the worst was her promise to take me to see a small island nearby if I did something, which did not happen because she had past experience getting stuck in a boat. This is totally understandable in hindsight. Story 62. I think I am not going to write mine, but I want to give a virtual hug to every person who wrote something. You are not alone. Story 63. My mother asked me to end her life. She did not understand why it upset me and repeated her request several times over the years. She genuinely wanted me to do it. Story 64. It was two things in one fight. I hope you enjoy your second divorce. You weren't dedicated enough in your first. My ex cheated. You won't be dedicated in your second. The second reason we are no contact and do not speak anymore. You know I'm thankful you miscarried because you obviously aren't ready to be a parent. Thanks, Mom. Story 65. I recently saw both my stepfather and mother after many years. I love my mother and wanted to speak with her. Even after the day I saw her, I still wanted to talk. After talking and reflecting, I realized that the person who had my back and actually became close with my children and me was telling the truth all along. Story 66. I was about 11 years old when I found a Lionel train set at a flea market. I cleaned it up and fixed the transformer, getting it all running perfectly. I was excited to tell my dad about it. Halfway through, he said, "Son, I was young once too, and I'm just not interested." We rode in silence for the rest of the drive. Story 67. Being told as a teenager after my parents divorced that they tried really hard to have me because they believed I would bring them closer and fix things between them still hurts so much to this day. Story 68. When I was excitedly playing a new independent band I found for my mother, she said in reference to my music tastes, "I don't know where we went wrong with you." I assume she meant it jokingly, but it still really hurt. Story 69. My mother told me she loves me, but it was not true. Her actions throughout my childhood confirmed this. That is why, in my adult years, I barely have a relationship with her, if what I do can even be considered a relationship. Story 70. I was a teenager, maybe 17, wearing a shirt my mother gave me. There was some cleavage, but nothing obscene, pretty modest as far as cleavage goes. I came home from school, and a man who has known me since I was a small child was there. My mother took me aside and told me to change my shirt because I was making him uncomfortable. I was so angry and sad that she didn't stand up for me, that I was the problem instead of this inappropriate man. She clearly didn't see anything wrong with the top since, as I said, she picked it out for me. It was only a problem when some disgusting man couldn't keep his eyes to himself. I still cannot believe he sexualized me, yet I was the one who got reprimanded. The worst part is, years later I talked to her about it and she doubled down. I'm sure she said much worse. She used to tease me like it was a sport. I think I blocked it out though. This one hurt because she's a feminist who used to protest passionately, but she did not have my back. Story 71. I was a stay-at-home mother of two when I left my abusive husband. He did everything he could to make my life miserable, including hurting my children. I was financially and emotionally broken. I called my mother, crying, and she essentially told me I had made my bed, so I had to lie in it. My father was already not speaking to me because of it. That was the day they died to me. Story 72. Is anybody here in my story? No, I am not here. Nobody hears me or sees me. As usual, this is one of the most heartbreaking stories I have ever lived through. I never thought such a thing would happen to me, and yet you have seen it happen to me. No one knows about the boy. Like I said, another day, another occurrence. We all are something else. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.